Hello, Brother Rex. In your preamble, you say that as a Muslim, you are compelled to seek knowledge. It's a great pity it wasn't written into the Quran that Muslims should be compelled to comprehend the knowledge that they find. I would point out that science actually means knowledge, so you're compelled to seek science, but you're not compelled to understand it, and that's blatantly obvious. Evolution does not disprove God. No science can disprove God, because science can only examine what can be examined. So, no, it doesn't disprove God, but if you cast your mind back to pre-Darwinian days, one of the greatest pieces of evidence given for God to anyone who spoke out and said, perhaps there isn't a God, and let's face it, anyone who did that in the Muslim world got an instant death sentence, and it's probably not that different today. So the primary piece of evidence that people used to give for God, when they were called upon to even give evidence, was, how else could we be here? So what evolution does is it blows out of the water what was once the strongest evidence in favour of God. That's evolution's part in all of this. It does not disprove God. Nothing can. Obviously, because God can't be examined. You show science God, and science will have a very good look at him, but as yet we'd be looking at fresh air. So to sum up, on question 1, evolution does not disprove God. Evolution removes one of the great cornerstones of the argument in favour of the existence of God. On to question 2. I am totally unaware of the maths and the calculations and the probabilities which you talk about in question 2. I can only assume that those calculations do not take into account the law of electromagnetic attraction, which is why and how one atom sticks to another, and it certainly doesn't take into account natural selection or survival of the fittest, because any understanding of those last two terms tells you that chance has nothing to do with it. The only chance that's involved is the original mutation. Whether that mutation survives even one generation is down to, does it help the organism survive? If it doesn't, then it disappears. If it does, then it's here. Also, by that calculation, I'd like to know what the odds are of a dinosaur turning into a bird. They strike me as a great deal higher than a primate turning into a human being. You may as well also talk about the odds of every other organism mutating and turning into a new species. We're very, very, very confident that that happened. Interesting that you should only pick on the example of Homo sapiens. And in question 3, you keep going on about this chance business. It's not about chance. That just demonstrates your scientific ignorance on not only evolution, but in many other areas. In physics, you're even worse. You say, what are the chances of that 5 elements will form tens of thousands of these atoms? You also say, 1 atom has 5 elements. This is absurd. Again, you're embarrassing yourself, because all an element is a material, a substance made out of atoms of only that element. Sodium is made out of sodium atoms, carbon is made out of carbon atoms. To say that carbon and sodium are made of elements is rather like saying that concrete and steel are made out of buildings and cars. Hopefully that will be simple enough for you to understand the scale of your misunderstanding. Another quote from you is, "These things cannot be taken by chance." Well, you said it there. Again, chance has nothing to do with it. The reason for the DNA molecules shape, the reason that the molecules bond in the way that they do, the reason that atoms bond to form those molecules is simply down to electromagnetic attraction. The laws which control this reaction are known to several decimal places. The quantum electrodynamics, which is the detailed explanation of the laws of electromagnetism, has an accuracy which is the equivalent of measuring the width of the United States down to the width of a human hair. Now, when there's a statement in the Quran which can be verified to that degree of accuracy, then perhaps we'll have something to talk about. But of course, the Quran doesn't change, so we'll never have anything to talk about when it comes to accuracy. If we look at a fundamental level at what Islam is and Christianity, we find that at some point God's attention was drawn to earth, and that he was able to communicate with an individual or individuals upon earth. For God to have a mind, he must have a brain. To have a brain, he must be bound in a physical universe. So he could not travel through space to find the earth. If you imagine a brain puncturing the universe and travelling across space to find this itty-bitty grain of sand, this atom, this quark in this sea of material, that is, according to science, absolute, well, it's bull, mate. It's all it is, it's bull. So we've got this non-existent mind travelling via a non-existent means, detecting a planet via a non-existent technique, communicating via a non-existent method with a human being. Even at the very most fundamental levels of God coming to the earth and communicating with a human being, science tells you that is impossible. There is no method by which this could be done. The laws that we have perfectly explain what we see. There is no need for a God. There is no need for programming of atoms to behave in a particular way. There is, in science, no need for God because everything is explained without God. Why can you not see this? A few last points which have very little to do with your questions. I've seen some Muslims applaud your video as quote-unquote great. If your argument in that video is quote-unquote great, then Tom and Jerry are the absolute epitome of in-depth analysis and philosophy. And as for this rubbish of you holding back the video responses so that you can analyse them and collate the various opinions involved, if you think I'm fooled by that for even 1 second, you must imagine me a fool. You are holding back these things because you don't know how to cope with them, and you're hoping that any Muslims or people wavering into the Muslim faith might see your video and think, oh, it is true, what a marvellous argument, I don't need to worry about science anymore. Allow all the responses now. You're embarrassing yourself. We know why you're holding them back. It has nothing to do with any intellectual investigation upon your part. It's simply trying to figure out a way out of all the different blind alleys that you yourself have walked into, and also to hope that you might just sway some ignorant people into thinking that you have a point. You don't have a point. All you have is ignorance. And if you don't choose to fight that, that's your business. But to try and drag others into it is immoral and disgusting. And to borrow from your analogy, you are the thief, and you have posted on the internet the surveillance film of you committing the crime. You have not researched objectively. You have not thought objectively. You have not concluded objectively. And you haven't comprehended at all